Hey fellas, let me ask you a quick question. Do you ever wonder, what if these psychotic killers in the movies come out of the screen? Does this idea send chills down to your spine? Well, you should embrace yourself, because history is full of such people. And today, I am going to make you familiar with a few of them, which I think have been the most notorious killers till date. So buckle up and be with me and top 10 serial killers on this crazy ride. Before we start, be sure to like and subscribe if you like this video. And with that said, let's begin. Number 1. Harold Shipman. Ever heard of a doctor murdering his own patients? Well, this is your guy. Shipman was a doctor in Manchester, UK, who reportedly killed 250 of his patients and has been considered the most prolific serial killer of the modern era. He killed elderly men and women in between the era of 1975 and 1998. He used to kill his patients for personal satisfaction as well as for money-gaining purposes. What a total psychopath. He has been accused of stealing jewelry and other precious items from his female patients' possessions. Well, who wouldn't like to have some free money? But killing innocent people over trivial ambitions is such an inhumane act. He was sentenced to death. However, he committed suicide in his cell at Wakefield Prison in 2004. Number 2. Ted Bundy. Imagine the level of insanity this guy had to show during his murder to be named as the crazy necrophile. I would say he must be the most deranged killer among them all, as he brutally killed more than 30 females. He was the most famous serial killer around the US in the 1970s. He used to kidnap his victims, assault them, and then used to dismantle their bodies. He also decapitated a few of his victims and kept their head as trophies. Gladly, he was convicted and executed in 1989. Number 3. Andrei Chikatilo. When I used my knife, it brought psychological relief, said this very person. Well, you can totally guess the level of his insanity by this confession. Andrei has been named as the Butcher of Rostov, the Red Ripper, and the Rostov Ripper. And why would he be named so? Well, between 1978 and 1990, he assaulted, murdered, and mutilated more than 50 young women and children in Russia. He also gnawed on the flesh of some of his victims. Disgusting, right? After a long period of 12 years, he was executed in 1992. What a sigh of relief. Number 4. Jeffrey Dahmer. Right when you think no other murderer could be more deranged than this one, the other name pops up and proves you wrong. This guy, Dahmer, has been called as Milwaukee Cannibal. He killed more than 17 young men and children over the span of 14 years. Around 1978 to 1991, he brutally murdered his victims, assaulted them, dismembered them, and sometimes even cooked the body parts of his victims and ate them. Man, why didn't you just eat pizza? He was such a psychopath that he also drilled a hole into one of his victims' heads. Finally, he was imprisoned and sentenced to 15 terms of life imprisonment in 1992, but was beaten to death by a fellow prisoner in 1994. You could say that it was well deserved. Number 5. Albert Fish. The Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, the Werewolf of Wisteria, the Gray Man, and the Boogeyman. All these psychotic names for a single person can surely tell you how lunatic this killer was. In the early 1900s, Fish murdered more than 100 children, assaulted them, and even cannibalized a few of them. On top of that, he even wrote a letter to the mother of one of his victims, mentioning how he lured the little girl, murdered her, and then ate her over the course of 9 days. At last, he was sentenced to capital punishment in 1934. Number 6. John Wayne Gacy. Can you sleep peacefully knowing there are dead bodies right under your house? I would lose my mind for sure, and I'm sure most of you would too. But look at the audacity of this guy. He assaulted and murdered more than 30 teenage boys and buried them under his house. He used to lure teenage boys to his house, promising them work or money, and then used to strangulate them. It was the time between 1972 to 1978 when he murdered his victims. You can relax now, as he was convicted and was executed by lethal injection in 1994. Number 7. Jack the Ripper. The famous mysterious killer whose identity couldn't be confirmed until date. His style of murders named him as Jack the Ripper and the Whitechapel Murderer. He killed females in London between 1888 and 1891. He would slit their throats and abdomens. He also removed the uterus of victims and took it as a prize with himself. That's why the name Ripper. He was never caught, but looking at the era which he operated in, he probably is dead by now, so no worries fellas. Number 8. Delfina and Maria de Jesus Gonzalez. Lady killers and sisters as well. Sounds a bit different, doesn't it? Delfina and Maria were sisters who used to own a brothel in Mexico. They used to hire people to please their wealthy customers. However, when they got sick, old, or less attractive, or were damaged, these sisters used to kill them. How sick of them. They also killed their wealthy customers and stole their money. According to the reports, they killed almost 91 people. Such high numbers that Guinness World Records stated them as the most prolific murderer partnership in the book. Long story short, they were sentenced to 40 years in prison, during which Delfina died and Maria lost in the world after completing her sentence. Number 9. Pedro Lopez. Have you ever seen a monster in real life? Well, here is one that you can see, named as Monster of the Andes. He killed and assaulted more than 300 women across Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador in the 1970s. More than 100 women were from different tribes. He was found guilty of murdering girls and women and confessed to his murders and even showed their graves, after which he was declared insane, which is a right decision. But he was released in 1998 for his good behavior. I wonder how he did that, but nobody knows his whereabouts till this day, so be a bit careful while roaming around in Colombia. Number 10. Marcel Pitot. The last but not least on our list is this French guy, Pitot. He was a French doctor and a serial killer in between 1942 and 1944. He was such a maniac that he built a soundproof home in which he killed almost 63 people. It was the time of the Second World War, and his victims were usually the Jews who tried to flee from the Nazis. He injected them with a lethal injection, claiming the injection as the vaccination against foreign diseases. These inhumane acts gave him the title of the Dr. Satan and Captain Valerie, and finally he was executed by guillotine in 1946. There are many others who committed countless murders and caused terror and sensation among people of different areas in the world, but what made these to the top list is their brutality in the murders and the number of their victims. So guys, this was it. I would recommend for you to always stay safe and keep your pepper spray handy for such incidents. Hopefully now you are familiar with the most notorious killers of the world. If you liked the video, do like and share with your friends and family, and let them know to be cautious as well. And don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you soon. Ciao fellas.